What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. On this episode, we're going to be masking the under chassis of my A90 Supra, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of detail. I'm not going to go all out on it, but I'm just going to give it that realism and just mask some few areas off and then give it some color. So what I'm doing here is I am using 3M's yellow masking tape. This is really good tape. You should definitely try this tape. It sticks pretty well on there. On painted or non-painted surfaces, it sticks really well. It's probably one of the best tapes that I've used. And I'm going to show you the proper way to actually mask this, the quick and fastest way in order to get this part out of the way. This is probably one of the most daunting tasks that I have ever come across, is always doing the masking part. Everybody hates the masking part. So what is a better way to do it? Now, I've seen people use like clay, or they'll put like putty, and just like they'll spend like maybe a couple minutes on end, maybe 20-30 minutes just filling the little holes and the little pockets in. I don't really do that. I find ways to make it a lot easier on me, and like I always say, you gotta work smarter and not harder. So what I do is I get a Sharpie and then I mask pretty much the area where the exhaust trim would go. And once I do that, and once I find that, I go ahead and get a Sharpie and I trace it. So once I'm tracing it, I get pretty much an idea of where the exhaust would go. And then once I finish doing the tracing, I get my X-Acto number 11 knife and I start cutting the pieces out. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like I said, it's the under chassis. You're never really going to see the bottom part of it. I usually like to leave these I don't really like to do them too perfect. A lot of people like to do them like to the T, which is cool, to each their own. But for me, I actually like to give it a little bit of realism. Maybe like some sort of weathering, or make it look like it's been scratched up a little bit, like the car's been on the road driving. So there's two parts. The exhaust part on the A90 Supra is silver, and where the trunk area in the back, where the actual muffler sits, is also like a silver coating, maybe like some sort of heat resistant. I did some research, and I did look at several pictures of the A90 Supra online, and it seems to me it's not really paint, but it seems to me it's like some sort of heating compartment for the exhaust. So it's probably, a good thing that the car has that on the real one, right? So basically, just be very careful when doing the cutting. I try to clean it up as much as I can, even though it's really quick, but just go over it and just double check your work and see where you're at, and then follow up with cleaning up the lines pretty nice. And then once you do that, you're only going to spend a couple of minutes on it, and it's not going to take a long time. So I'll pretty much start from the beginning and cut any excess masking tape off, and I will just go along the lines and cut it really nice. Now, don't worry about adding like deep cuts while doing this. It doesn't matter. Like, you're never going to see the bottom part anyways. Even if you flip it over, you'll see the bottom detail, but once you're done with it, it's just going to sit in the case. So if you want to go ahead and add the detail, go for it, but for me, this is what works a lot easier for me. Just keep going back and forth. If you keep seeing masking tape, just go ahead and trim it off, and just get in there, get closer, and just rip it off. Get some tweezers, and it'll help you remove that masking tape off. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's gonna give that realism where it's a different color, right? It's so the remainder of the chassis is black, but where the exhaust pocket is, it's all silver. Now the only thing that I did paint was the rear subframe where the rear brakes go. That I did paint the color of the car, so that actually came out pretty nice, and I will be installing that at the end of this video. But let's go ahead and just give some detail here. And I will be doing a single exit exhaust. So I opted out from the dual muffler. There's not too many aftermarket dual mufflers out there right now. So I said, you know what? The heck with it. I'm just going to do a single exhaust, HKS style, just like the original Supra. It's going to look so good. And I said, you know what? I have a pack of aluminum HKS style mufflers, so I'm going to use one of them, and I'm going to do a custom piping on the exhaust. So now I got my exhaust part cut out, and so now I'm going to add and cover up the rest of the rear wheel where the rear wheels will sit. Go ahead and mask all that off, and that's what I'm doing here, is masking all that stuff, because I want that to remain black. I don't want to get any overspray in there, so I will mask that off. But like I said, in the rear muffler area, there is also silver type paint in there, so I'm gonna go ahead and paint that as well. I'm trying to replicate the same as pretty much the Supra will be in real life, like the real car. So just add a little bit of more masking tape there, cover that really well. And the good thing about this is that masking tape is really easy to work with. It'll bend into any shape that you want it to, and if it doesn't, just go ahead and slice it off with your X-Acto knife and you're good to go. Now the tricky part is the top part is supposed to be cut in a certain shape, because it starts to kind of go into a V shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just press as much as I can, but I'm also going to cut and trim. So the top part is, I don't want that. That is not actually painted silver, only where the muffler sits. So I'm measuring here how much tape I'm going to need, and then I'm going to trim all the excess masking tape that I don't need. So I'll pretty much, what you do is you work your way around the contours and where it bends and twists. So, and as soon as you cut it off, you can go ahead and use your thumb to blend it in, basically. just take your time. No, don't rush it. Just get a feel for it. Get a feel for the masking tape, and work your way around. Use your thumbs and your fingertips to blend the masking tape in, and then you'll see that it will actually start to take its shape. So that is the easy part. Just do a lot of touching with your fingers. Mesh the masking tape very well in there, and then you'll get the grooves, and then you'll find where you actually need the places that you need to cut off, so you can mask pretty much the rest of the other parts that you don't want to get overspray or get sprayed with the color that you're gonna spray it with. Just a few more corrections here, and then I will go ahead and get the color ready and go ahead and apply the silver paint that I want to use. Looks pretty good to me. So just give it another look. Move all the tape around and see if you're missing any spots, and then go ahead and apply your color. So I already mixed up my color and I already put it into my airbrush, and then I went ahead and sprayed it. So now I'm going to take off the masking tape, and then you'll see the areas that it actually painted and the areas that it masked off. That tape is really stuck on there, so take your time, don't rush it, and pull it off slow. And then I'll start working next on the rear subframe. I'll start putting that together, and then we'll see how it's gonna look. Man, these parts came out so good. The color came out so good. It pops so much. It's gonna look really good. It's gonna give that nice contrast. Now this is the part that you have to pretty much do some measuring and just kind of eyeball and see where your suspension is gonna lay. So it all comes down to this. This is pretty much how your final stats is gonna look. So a lot of the times what I like to do is I like to modify the shocks, either the shocks if it comes with shocks or the coilover system on the actual vehicle, depending on what the year is. But usually, since it's plastic, I just like to trim a little bit on the coilover part. It's really hard to see it anyways after you put the wheels, so you won't be losing a lot of detail. And this is what allows the subframes and the suspension parts to actually sit very low and give you that aggressive look. So a lot of people ask me, how do you get the stance right? How do you lower a model car? A lot of pretty much messing around with it, really, and just a lot of eyeballing it and taking a look and seeing what else is getting in the way of the car sitting low. And basically, I put the chassis and the body together all the time just to give me an idea of where I'm at. And that will pretty much determine where the ride height is gonna be in the end. So what I'm gonna do is I'm also gonna get the wheels that I'm gonna use for this project, and I'll start mocking it up, and it'll give me an idea where the rotors and the wheel and the fender sit. So to me here, it's looking pretty good. Basically, I want the car to sit as low as possible. So I'll mock up the wheels, see where I'm at, and if I like the stance, I'll continue with the project. But if there's something wrong in between, I'll go back and correct the issue, and hopefully that will help out. So the front and back were looking pretty good. I'm gonna start with the front subframe and installing the rest of the front brakes and the coilovers at the front, and then we'll see where my stance is at the front. I was very surprised with this the new Tamiya Supra. The suspension is already pretty much low. Like I didn't really have to do too much work to it. Every time I lay the chassis down, it's always sitting pretty low to me. So it's looking pretty good so far. So I didn't really have to do that much work. It was a really great kit. Now I am gonna pretty much cut the exhaust and try to keep some of the OEM exhaust on there, just so it could be an easy placement basically with adding the new exhaust. So I'm gonna start getting rid of pretty much at the catalytic converter and just straight pipe it all the way out. And what I use for making custom made parts is I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys already use this, but it's by Evergreen Scale Plastics, and basically they have a lot of different styles of rods and tubes, and these are, without this I probably would not do a lot of custom work. So these products actually help out a lot with custom exhaust and molding of wide bodies or anything like that, making intakes, things like that. So definitely look into them if you haven't already used them. They're fairly cheap. You get like 10 pieces in a pack at about $3 to $5 a pop. So that's actually not that bad. So I retain pretty much the resonator in the beginning part of the exhaust, just so it can pretty much give me a starting point of how to pretty much design the single exit exhaust. And then the cool part about it so I'm using a rod and not the tube. So try to stay away from the tube because the tube is actually hollow and it does not bend very well. It'll actually kink and it'll pretty much look deformed. What I've noticed is that the rod actually bends a lot easier, and I'll show you what I use to bend it. Yes, I definitely use a lighter. So now you don't have to do it for that. You don't have to burn it for that long. Just a few seconds, I would say like 5 seconds, and then the rod's already warm enough for you to do the bend. So I'll do the kink and I'll pretty much start mocking it up, start placing it in there, and just follow the tunnel. Follow the way the original exhaust would stay there, and then you get your new rod tubing, and then you pretty much follow the same pattern. So there's a little bit too much at the very top, so I'm going to trim a little bit off and just kind of modify it a little bit more. And make sure to always have a Sharpie, something to make your markings. That always comes helpful. That way you know where to start and cut and where to connect the exhaust pieces or anything that you're working with. And basically what I do is I kind of make the markings where I need a bend. I get the lighter and light it up a little bit, and then I start putting pressure on the rod to give me that bend that I'm looking for. And it's starting to kind of shape up here, and you notice that it'll kink at the beginning and then it'll start kinking halfway into the shape where the original OEM exhaust would sit. So now I'm using Hobby Design's aluminum style exhaust mufflers. These are pretty cool because they are indeed exact what they say they are. They are aluminum, and the aluminum finish actually looks way better. Now to do an aluminum custom catback all the way, like a full custom exhaust, that's pretty unheard of. And the main reason is behind that is it's pretty heavy. So I don't know if you want to have a very heavy piece on your model. I've never done that before, but even the tip alone is pretty heavy. Like it pretty much weighs down the whole car down. It's crazy, but it's got a good weight to it. Imagine like a little fishing weight or something like that. So it kind of feels the same. That reminds me of that. It's starting to take shape, and the progress is looking good so far. So I think a few more kinks and I will start applying and start measuring where the muffler would sit, and then that should be it from there. And then the next thing would be adding the color. So I think I'm gonna go with the titanium type effect. So we'll see how that's gonna look. Now, another important thing is, before I go any further, I noticed that the Supra, the new 2020 Supra, is a dual exhaust, right? So it's got dual exits on the rear diffuser. So since I'm gonna be using a single exit, I need to mock it up and see if that aftermarket muffler will fit through the OEM exits on the rear diffuser. So unfortunately, I tested it and it doesn't fit on the actual OEM diffuser. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make some extra cuts in order to have the muffler sit nice and snug and fit, and there's no interference in the way. So I'm gonna get my Sharpie and mark how much axis of plastic I'm gonna need to cut, and then just about right where the middle fin is at. So I'm just making the hole a lot bigger because those weren't designed for an aftermarket exhaust. Basically, those were designed for the stock dual muffler. I'll just get my handy Dremel tool here, and I will cut away that piece that I don't need. And this will allow the aftermarket HKS style muffler shoot straight out. So I'm gonna trim some extra access plastic off of that diffuser, and I'm also gonna mimic the other side. I decided I'm just not gonna do where the muffler's gonna exit out. I might as well do the other side so they both match. I don't want one side just looking weird and the other side just doesn't align with it. So now that's a better fit. Now the actual muffler sits nicely and it could exit out at a sideways angle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my sanding papers. Probably I'm using a 320 grit, and I'm just going to sand and just kind of shape it and trying to make it not look so rough and just kind of smooth it out. it's looking pretty good for me so far. Just a few more bends, and that's pretty much going to be it for that. Now, I know I'm struggling a lot with the diffuser. It all keeps falling off, and I could tape it, but I don't, because it would have to wrap around the body, and I don't want to add any scratches because the paint actually really looks pretty flawless to me. So I don't want to add any more damage to it. So just be patient with it, and then just keep mocking it up and making sure that you have the correct fitment that you need. And it's looking pretty good so far for me. And once you heat it up, let it cool. That you could do your shape and bends that you need, and then let it cool down, and it'll actually go back to its original form, and it'll pretty much stay there. So that's the beauty of it. I prefer the rod over the tubing, because the rod is actually a lot easier to work with, and it'll bend without giving you any weird kinks or anything like that. All I have to do now is attach my final piece, add the muffler, and shape it in the direction that I want it to exit off the rear diffuser. And it's looking good so far. And once that's done, then the final thing to do is add the final color. And I think I'm going to paint it silver and then just give it some titanium heat stains on it. And on the next video, I will show you pretty much how to do that and what kind of paint you could use to simulate heat stains. Thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace.